This is Armstrong Williams on the right side. Armstrong. Don't curse, speak English. Armstrong. Virtuous society. Armstrong. I dare you to listen. Hey, turn it up. Hey. Armstrong. Get on the right side. Armstrong. Elevate your mind. Armstrong. I'm Armstrong Williams on the right side. Armstrong. Hey, yo, man, it's your boy K.O. And you're tuned into the most conservative of our brothers. Armstrong. The Armstrong Williams Show. Please give me a break. Grow up.
You ever wonder why President Obama blinked on Susan Rice's nomination for Secretary of State, but not even blink or wince when it comes to Chuck Hagel as Secretary of Defense as his nominee? Is it history? Is it personal friendship? Is it bipartisanship? Is it trust? Are those the major factors? Does he realize that he could put a stab wound further in the Republicans' hearts to show that they're unreasonable? I don't know if you realize this, but back at the 2004 Republican convention, when then Senator Chuck Hagel was weighing whether to run for president in 2008, he paid a call on our delegation, and his obligatory joke about his devotion to ethanol went over well. But then, to the puzzlement of some in the room, he started talking to his conservative breakfast audience about the United Nations and the need for neutralism and this multilateralism in tackling world problems. Well, I got to tell you something. Is President Obama and Chuck Hagel, do they have a lot in common? Needless to say, that wasn't quite what we were hearing from the convention stage, or for that matter, from anyone else in the GOP. Hagel didn't run for president, but as it turns out, his remarks ended up laying the groundwork for a different kind of future as a potential defense secretary in the Obama administration. There are well-known controversies associated with Hagel's expected nomination, which happened, involving everything from climate change, gay rights, to Israel, Iraq, and Iran. But unlike the case of UN Ambassador Susan Rice, who withdrew as a potential Secretary of State nominee amid criticism from Republicans, President Obama is pressing full speed ahead with Chuck Hagel. And given the huge battles looming over immigration, the national debt, and other issues, did President Obama pick a fight that he can't win? And what's the difference about Hagel than everybody else? I don't think the president wants to be seen as caving twice to GOP attacks, Rice followed by Hagel. I think Hagel would be a solid ally at the Pentagon because the president has his share of tensions with the military, as many accounts have been made clear, including retired General Stanley McChrystal's new memoir and the Rolling Stone article that led to his resignation. And also, Chuck Hagel shares the president's caution about military intervention. And Hagel would add a tinge of bipartisanship to the president's cabinet. And Obama and Hagel truly like and trust each other. They traveled together in Iraq in 2008, and Hagel defended the president that year against campaign trail attacks. Obama and the senator got to know each other pretty well in the Senate, even though he wasn't there that long. And even Hagel said last year in an interview with Al Monitor, an English language website covering the Middle East, and he said, "I have the highest regard for President Obama in every way. I think he's one of the finest, most decent individuals I've ever known, and one of the smartest." And you know, ladies and gentlemen, senators are sometimes inclined to give deference to their own in a confirmation process. But Hagel's blunt run in public life has provoked discomfort and dismay among Republicans and Democrats alike. The former Nebraska senator has a lot of reassuring and convincing to do before he can count on winning that deference from former colleagues and others in the chambers He left 4 years ago. But I must add, with President Obama as your ally, knowing what he's up against, and he nominates him anyhow, I think Chuck Hagel may be okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Armstrong, Williams & Show, and thank you so much for joining us. Let me see if Elaine Donnely is on the line. Elaine, are you on the line? I always have this problem when I invite Ms. Donnely, but that's okay. We're moving right ahead. Milo Pinckney, how are you, brother?
Doing very well. Very well.
See, I can always count on you to be on time. I love people who respect time. Thank you for that,
Makes our
Milo.
world go round.
Thank you for that. So, Milo, what about Hagel? And this.
I got to tell you, I like Hagel as a choice. I think,
you know, I'm not surprised.
I like Hagel as a choice. I think Hagel is, in many respects, I don't want to use the word moderate. I think it engenders the wrong thought. I think Hagel is somebody who has historically demonstrated balanced thinking and a fact-based approach to problems. And I think Hagel may be a viable choice. I think there's still an uphill battle in his selection as far as getting him, ratified by the House and the Senate. But I think he's a good choice. I tip my hat to our president. This is one of the better decisions he's made recently.
Elaine Donnely, you disagree, don't you?
Hello. Can you hear me now?
I was about to talk about you. You know I'll talk about you, but in a good way. I will talk about you. Okay?
Well, I wrote an article about this yesterday to zero in on just one aspect of all this controversy. And no, I haven't taken a formal position on Senator Hagel. I think there's an awful lot of questions that need to be asked and answered. A lot of reservations have been raised about foreign policy issues, and I share them. But what I'm writing about today is something that I think people are taking at face value, something really ridiculous, and that is the opposition of the gay activist groups to Senator Hagel's nomination because of something that he said about a nominee to be the ambassador to Luxembourg 14 years ago. This is street theater. It's really absurd because Senator Hagel was one of a number of senators who raised questions about this particular nominee. It wasn't that he was homosexual. Actually, he was bisexual. He was involved with a number of men even as he was married and had 5 kids. So that's a bisexual lifestyle. But the funding, the activism, the aggressive activism for LGBT causes is a matter of record, and it's really not in dispute. If you look at the San Francisco Examiner articles written about Mr. Hormel at the time, the senators who expressed reservations about what he would do as an ambassador, not in his personal life, but as an ambassador, you can see that Senator Hagel was by no means saying anything unusual. What bothers me more is his apology for saying something that was truthful at the time and certainly not out of line even today because of what type of a person and nominee this was. It kind of shows a desire to be politically expedient, to say something that might get him confirmed. I'm more concerned about what he will do in the future about the military social issues. Right now, it seems like he's pandering to the LGBT left. That's what his apology seems to suggest. And I'd like to know, how far are you going to go with this LGBT activism? The news release put out by Get Equal, it's one of these street theater groups, they're advocating for transgenders in the military. And they are serious about it. They really do want this. Okay, Senator Hagel, what is your position on that?
Milo, why do you think the Israeli lobby is so against this nomination?
Pardon? I'm sorry. Did you say that again?
No, I'm asking Milo. Milo, what do you think the issue the Israeli lobby has with Chuck Hagel?
I think Hagel's been a strong-line centralist in promoting and supporting his own assessments, and has historically demonstrated an independence from the party line. And I think the Israeli supporters, as well as the Israelis themselves, are threatened by his individualization.
In other words, they can't control him?
I think the same words. Yeah, I think he's somebody who is going to think it through, make a decision based upon what he believes to be right, and he's not going to align himself with one group or another if his conclusion is independent of their own. And in this particular role, I want a strong self-thinker.
Elaine, is it?
I'd like to comment on
please,
that.
Please go ahead.
I would like a Secretary of Defense that puts the national interests of the United States as paramount and has good judgment in dealing with our allies, including Israel, and nations that are enemies, that have factions in charge that are enemies of the United States.
Well, I think, Elaine, that
yes,
in fact we're saying the same thing.
You need to be an independent thinker, but you need to have your priorities right.
I think we're saying the same thing, and I think Hagel has demonstrated an unchallenged patriotism to this country and loyalty to this country, and I think his decision-making process will be, as it has been historically, going forward. I think it will be in support of what he perceives to be the best interests of the country. But I also think that he is a man that understands the checks and balances of a chain of command and will follow the policy and orders of his commanding officer, in this case, the president.
Mm-hmm. Problem is, there does seem to be a favoritism toward factions that are enemies of Israel, and how that will play out in the future remains to be seen. Yes, it is true. He has given a lot of support to Israel and their defense. What will happen in the future? That's where I think the focus of questions needs to lie, and I think we need to think this through as a nation. What are we going to do if the enemies of Israel decide that they are indeed going to carry out on their threats to destroy Israel? These are serious issues. They're much more serious than the antics of the LGBT left that has gotten so much ink in the last week or so.
Well, I think the
Hold
LGBT
them, Milo. We're going to come back to LBGT. Elaine Donnely, Military Readiness Center for it all. Milo Pinckney, Armstrong, Williams, and we're talking politics. Don't go away.
Armstrong Williams returns in a moment.
For more information on the Armstrong Williams Show, please visit our new website at www.rightsidewire.com. There you can find his syndicated column archive, view live streams, and get your favorite conservative pundits' views on the current issues affecting the American people. From building wealth to foreign policy, stay connected with Armstrong Williams and his colleagues at the all-new www.rightsidewire.com.
Does your school, team, church, or charity need a new fundraiser? Do you need to work out of your home or part-time? Are you a small business that can use an additional revenue stream? Then you need Yellow Llama. Do you need affordable web services or tools to enhance your existing business? Are you a graphic artist who wants to create a revenue stream with your art but not get ripped off? Then go to www.yellowllama.com.
Hi, this is Armstrong Williams. What does it mean to be conservative? Freedom of speech, freedom of free enterprise, freedom of assembly, less government, less taxes. As a matter of fact, a flat tax. Everyone should pay proportional tax. It doesn't matter whether you make $100 million or $10,000. Everyone should pay their 10%. Everyone should have something at stake in this American economy. I'm Armstrong Williams, expressing what we mean by conservative traditional value.
America must change course if we hope to survive and save the American dream for our children and grandchildren. How do we fix Social Security and Medicare? How do we cut government spending? How do we reform health care? How do we simplify the tax code? The Heritage Foundation has a bold plan that tackles these tough problems using common sense solutions that leave partisan politics on the sidelines. Find out how we can save the American dream at savingthedream.org, paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
Hi, this is Armstrong Williams with an opportunity to own a piece of paradise in Nassau, Bahamas. Spectacular land prices, 8,000 square feet, 20,000 square feet lot, affordable prices, hilltop properties with views of the magnificent sea. Just call 242-677-3120 or 3121 or go to info@rightsidewire.com and leave your information.
Where heads of state, sports, entertainment, and political celebrities meet. You're listening to Armstrong Williams.
When President Barack Obama first suggested that Chuck Hagel might be his choice for Secretary of Defense, some gay activists pledged to oppose the former senator because he is not sufficiently supportive of LGBT, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender causes. This gratuitous slap at President Obama, who indulges the same critics with LGBT Equality Month celebrations at the White House every June, should not be taken seriously. LGBT attacks on Hagel center on his 1999 comments about James C. Harmel, President Bill Clinton's pick for ambassador to Luxembourg. All ambassadorial nominees undergo extensive background checks. When information about the wealthy food companies' aggressive advocacy of LGBT causes came to light, Hagel was one of many senators who objected to the controversial nomination. That was 1999. This is 2013. Milo, you were about to make a point about the LBGT.
I think that you just made it for me. You know, it was 1999. I would hope that in 10 years plus time, somebody would expand their thinking and grow. And the fact that a position has changed or can change is not an unreasonable thing. I think one of the problems that we have today is we look at these sound bites and we make decisions based upon sound bites. I think you have to look at the tenure of a candidate's experience and demonstrated history and say, hey, has this person grown? Have they evolved? His positions on Israel, going back to Elaine's earlier commentary, her concern, I recognize her concern, but the reality of it is, here is a guy who has demonstrated the ability and, more importantly, the willingness to consider all the facts and make a rational, informed decision based upon those very facts.
Well, hold on a second here. There was nothing wrong with what Senator Hagel said about this particular nominee. Mm-hmm. That was the point of the article. The activists, the gay activists who are complaining about him, forced him or persuaded him to give an apology that was not necessary. In fact, that apology raises questions about what Senator Hagel will do for reasons of expediency to try to please this faction.
And I understand
this
that,
particular nominee was very controversial.
His
nomination did not go to the floor, was not voted on. It was a recess appointment because President Clinton knew he would never get it through the Senate. And there also had to be assurances given by this nominee that he would not bring his 30 years younger partner with him to the embassy in Luxembourg, a Catholic country. There was a lot of controversy about this very wealthy gentleman that has very aggressively supported LGBT activist groups throughout his adult life. So this is not a matter of Senator Hagel saying something out of line. I think the activist groups are trying to pretend that it was out of line. What they're really saying is anybody who disagrees with their agenda right now, including transgenders in the military, if you agree with them on everything, then you too will get the same kind of treatment. This is another form of street theater. It is political. It should not be taken seriously. The only thing to be taken seriously is what would this Secretary of Defense, Mr. Hagel, do with LGBT causes and factions if and when he becomes the next Secretary of Defense.
And my assessment of that is that what he would do is evaluate the facts as it relates to the particular case and make an informed decision at that time based upon his assessment.
Based on what is the principle that he would follow? If your principle is, I will do what LGBT factions want, then you go the whole rainbow flag striped agenda. You go the whole way. But if your interest is the best interest of the military, if you want good order, discipline, morale, readiness, all of those things, if that's your priority, you're going to say, wait a minute, let's gather the facts. What do we know already about LGBT law? It's been in effect now over a year. What about how is it really working out? There is no real information coming out of the Pentagon because their official position is everything's just fine.
I'm not sure that there's really a question embedded in that dialogue, but to the question that I believe you were asking is, what do I think he would do? What I believe he would do is make an assessment of the facts to the best of his ability and make an appropriate judgment based upon that data. And I think
toward what end? That's the question I'm trying to get out of you.
Towards the end of whatever he perceives to be in the best interest of the United States and the individual interests of the American people.
What about
this man
national defense?
has been
what about
solid
national security? That's
Isn't that all
the
the same
primary
thing?
thing.
Isn't that all
National
the same
security.
thing?
Is the LGBT left agenda, including transgenders in the military, and I only mentioned that because that was in the news release that came out against
Elaine, do you have an issue with transgenders in the military?
Is that in the best interest of the armed forces?
My question to you is, do you have an issue with transgenders in the military?
I sure do. Don't you?
Well, then that's what you're focusing on, because your question was, what will he do? And I'm responding to the question. And the question is, this man, based upon his historical performance, will make a fact-based assessment that is in the best interest of the national interest of the American and the American people. If he is Secretary of Defense, that by default constitutes the best interest of the military and the national defense, which is one of his principal responsibilities.
Nothing is by default. In the age of Obama, unfortunately, it's a reasonable expectation on your part, but this administration has been putting, in the case of social policy, the feminist agenda, the LGBT agenda, the extreme diversity agenda, meaning that there should be diversity metrics, read quotas, to promote women in land combat.
So we're basically...
So what is the position of the Secretary of Defense nominee on that issue?
So basically
the infantry
what you're saying is let's politicize the issue and complain about this gentleman's potential, not even demonstrated rhetoric, but potential.
What I wrote is
I have your article in front of me.
Milo, let her finish.
That need to be asked and answered. You are assuming the best about the nominee. That's fine. That's your opinion. I want to hear the answers to those questions, and they need to be taken seriously, serious questions. And you don't write an agenda of questions to be asked based on what the local LGBT activist group is demanding. All we're saying is, let's take this seriously. We do have an administration that has positions that are controversial in many different areas, but national security is the one area that we really need to pay attention.
All right, Elaine, I'm going to suggest the following to you, because I don't disagree with the underlying premise of your thought. What I realize you have an agenda, and that's fine. You're entitled to it. But what I believe is the constructive way to approach this, and this is the one thing I do like about this guy, is Hagel has had a demonstrated history of actually listening to the subject matter and making an informed decision. And he has historically not gone any standard line. He has, if you look at his track record, he has offended everybody because he's made decisions based upon his own assessment of the facts. Having said that, what I would focus on, since your issue is a valid one, and you are a voice among the many, I think the focus should be making sure that these questions are asked, but not spun with the subtext of an agenda. But hey, I would like clarity and understanding as it relates to this.
Come on, as if you don't have opinions on issues. Of course, we have opinions on issues, and the priorities are different. My priorities are high standards, sound priorities for the armed forces of the United States. There are agendas that say no, gay rights is more important, that careerism is more important, as if the military is like any other equal opportunity employer. Those views are indeed embraced by the President of the United States. So the administration reflects that. But members of Congress have a different view in many areas, and we're going to find out in the future how this is all going to shake out. But who knows? We may, if he is confirmed, we may find that he does have more of an open mind than appears to be the case when he apologizes to groups that don't even deserve an apology. We'll see what he does. But I do think that serious questions need to be asked and answered right now.
Well, I would say this to you, Elaine, because for 90% of your agenda, I totally agree with you. For 90%.
Wait a minute. What do you mean by agenda? I just told you what the
your value system
are that I think should be
Let me select a different choice of words. Your value system. 90% of it I agree with.
Regardless of the issue. Okay, that's it.
90%.
What are you talking about? What are the principles that you think should apply regardless of the issue, including the LGBT issue?
I'll tell you exactly what I think.
Are you in favor of transgenders in the military, for instance?
I'm in favor of Americans who demonstrate a capacity to serve the interests of the national.
So you are in favor of that?
No, Elaine. You asked me a question. What I'm going to ask you to do is have the common decency to actually listen to the answer.
Well, then just give me the answer
not
to the
put words
question.
in my
I'll
mouth.
be glad to listen.
Okay. My position is very simple. Any American who qualifies for the minimum requirements of military service should have the right to serve in the military if they are an American citizen, regardless of their gender, regardless of their sexual orientation. If they meet the test requirements, they deserve a right to play a role in our military and defend their nation. That's the right of a citizen to protect the nation.
So that includes
and I don't believe that by
in the military.
default. Let me finish, please. But I don't believe by default of sexual orientation that disqualifies anybody from military service.
So okay. Now you've stated what your agenda is.
That's not an agenda.
If you want to use that word, you have an agenda there, and certain other people do share it. I happen not to share that opinion because such an agenda or implementation of it would harm good order, discipline, readiness, morale. We already have a huge problem with sexual assaults in the military, and it's not just women who are being affected in this. Okay, the rates are just skyrocketing. We don't need to have more social policies that increase the problems that we already have.
So why not? Would you inhibit women from serving?
Pardon?
Would you inhibit straight women from serving in the military?
Of course not. Of course not. I'm talking about policies that we need to have.
So is a straight woman less likely or more likely to be
discipline rather than indiscipline?
Woman.
Did you hear what I just said?
Yeah, I did. I'm trying to follow the logic because
I don't know how you could if you were talking over me.
Milo, let her please complete her point and respond. No, we're coming back, Elaine, Milo. Please, civility, guys, because you're not far apart. At least listen to each other so you can intelligently respond after listening. We'll be back. Milo Pinckney, Elaine Donnely. I'm Armstrong Williams. Our phone lines are open. info@rightsidewire.com. Don't go away.
Armstrong Williams return.
For more information on the Armstrong Williams Show, please visit our new website at www.rightsidewire.com. There you can find his syndicated column archive, view live streams, and get your favorite conservative pundits' views on the current issues affecting the American people. From building wealth to foreign policy, stay connected with Armstrong Williams and his colleagues at the all-new www.rightsidewire.com.
Life is full of unexpected changes. Everyone has potential to do wrong. And when they choose to do it, contact the Bucksell Group for your private investigation needs. TheBucksellGroup.com or by phone at 202-243-9746. Whether there's an instance of a cheating spouse, child custody, process service, or security, don't continue suspecting. Get closure so that you can move on with your life. Visit TheBucksellGroup.com now or call 202-243-9746. If you think it's happening, it probably is.
To travelers along the road of life who have fallen asleep at the wheel, to the many who woke up in time to avert disaster and get back on the righteous path. For the ones who crashed and survived and now adhere vigilantly to a virtuous and righteous path. Finally, Armstrong Williams' much-anticipated new book, Reawakening Virtues, gives his insights into these daily challenges and much more. Reawakening Virtues is available in bookstores and at Amazon.com.
Join the millions of Americans who pursue one of our country's finest traditions, from hunting to sport shooting. Since 1871, the NRA has grown as a service organization involved in all aspects of shooting sports and is a proud defender of the Bill of Rights. Join today to begin taking advantage of exclusive membership offers and discounts, including up to $25,000 in insurance coverage. Contact the NRA today. Call 1-800-672-3888 or visit nra.org.
Most Americans simply have never been taught the basics of money management, let alone how to secure their financial future. But there is hope. Financial Education and Literacy Advisors, also known as FELA, does what others don't. FELA teaches financial education. If you'd like more information about providing a financial wellness program for your employees, or a credit-bearing college course in personal finance, or other valuable programs, please visit myfela.com. That's myfela.com, or send an email to info@myfela.com.
Elder Chicks is an exciting part of the fastest growing segment of the population. Women in their 70s, 80s, and older who are mastering the art of a senior life. We're no longer unseen and unheard. We're providing role models for each other and the baby boomers who are fast approaching retirement. Join our virtual community. Hit www.elderchicks.com on your computer keyboard.
Where heads of state, sports, entertainment, and political celebrities meet. You're listening to Armstrong Williams.
And welcome back to the Armstrong Williams Show. Elaine, complete what you were saying, and then Milo will respond. We're talking about Chuck Hagel. and the attacks on him by the LGBT continue, Ms. Donnelly.
Yes, all I'm saying is the military isn't there to be an equal opportunity employer. It's not there to serve political causes or try to please special interest groups. It's there to defend the country, and it needs a man who takes this mission seriously. We need a president who I think will take a more serious view in the future. We live in a very dangerous world, and the Congress has a lot to do with this. The Senate has the right to advise and consent, and that means questions. It means getting on the record information we don't have right now, including what will be the position of this nominee on the social issues that are very important to our men and women who serve. It's not about me. It's not about special interest groups. It's about them. We shouldn't be doing anything that makes their job and their mission more difficult and more dangerous.
Milo Pinckney?
On the surface, I can't say I disagree with what Elaine's saying. The difficulty I have is the subtext.
Thank you.
And the subtext suggests that by default of somebody's orientation, that disqualifies them, which may or may not be the case, but no one has presented a logical argument for why that is the case. How does a soldier's sexual orientation impact their sense of order, their respect for the chain of command, or their loyalty and posture to defend the interests of the American people?
It isn't a matter of orientation, it's a matter of conduct. And the law, the one that Congress repealed hastily in the lame duck session 2010, was all about conduct. In the military, people live in close quarters. The situation is very different than what you and I live in on a day-to-day basis. The testimony of military experts at all levels was pretty much pushed aside and ignored because the administration had a political agenda, a promise made to the LGBT activist groups, the same ones that are entertained at the White House every year in the month of June. So the president has been reelected. The president, I think, benefited from the fact that the country as a whole really did not cycle into many of these issues, and now we will see what happens next. So the choice of the Secretary of Defense is very important. The Senate needs to take it very seriously.
You realize why you haven't answered my question.
I tell you what we're going to answer. We're going to talk about
I'm sorry,
something.
which question?
No, we're going to talk about something else. We've beaten this dead horse to death, okay? There's no more that we can get out of this turnip. We're moving right along. Let me raise this for you. What about the president's selection as the person to head CIA? Why is that so controversial?
Well, that's going to be an interesting hearing. We need to know what was the role of Mr. Brennan when Benghazi was going down. Yes, he is an expert on the use of drones, and we know there were drones that were seeing from the sky what was going on. I think we need to hear more from the people who were in place in the White House and the State Department, and that includes Secretary Clinton. We need to know what really happened there, and we need to prevent it from happening at embassies elsewhere in that dangerous part of the world.
Milo, you have any thoughts on this subject?
Boy, you know something? The stars are going to ring, because on that one, Elaine and I agree 100%.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing to add to that. That puts it in a nutshell.
What can we gauge so far in the first couple of months after the president's victory, where he's headed? What will happen in 2 months with the fiscal cliff? Were you satisfied with what was negotiated, Elaine?
Well, it's very disturbing to hear belatedly. I wish that Mr. Boehner had said this sooner when he's meeting with the president, and the president is saying, I don't want to hear about spending. I don't want to hear that we're spending too much. You can almost see the scene there within the Oval Office. That's really appalling. And frankly, though, it isn't just the president. The Republicans need to do a better job of explaining what all of this debt is doing to our future and how it will affect our children, future generations. Why are we borrowing so much from China and other countries? Why is our economy not being allowed to grow? Because of higher taxes, because of the regulation, the burdens of Obamacare. I wish the Republicans would start doing short advertisements that are purely devoted to certain segments of all of these controversies, because people still don't understand why it's happening, but they're going to start seeing that bad things are happening, just like we saw taxes all of a sudden went up and people said, wow, how did this happen? Well, it had a lot to do with what they did or did not do in Washington.
Milo, does it concern you that the electorate...
let me first respond to
okay,
Armstrong.
yes.
I hear what you're saying, Elaine, but I think there's one significant component missing from your hypothesis, and that is, do the American people really care? And I think that the evidence suggests otherwise. The whole fiscal cliff debate and in Washington came and went in almost a flash when you think about it. And the American people, for the most part, really don't want to know the facts. The greater majority of people are comfortable in their ignorance and happy to have somebody else responsible for their circumstances. And that's why Obama got reelected, and that's why the fiscal cliff discussion came and went in the manner that it did. And the reality of it is, until we educate the masses and get the masses to understand that this debt is actually being paid by them, the elusive they will continue to dominate the thinking of the masses.
Well, here I have to agree with you too, and that's exactly what I was kind of getting at when I said there needs to be some kind of education, something that is long term, that is not tied only to a candidate, something that is educational to reach what are called low information voters. The low information voters made a difference, but they weren't the only ones. There were a lot of people who should have come out to vote that did not vote. In my state, Michigan, the theory was, especially Michigan and similar states, when people are on food stamps or they're worried about their unemployment insurance, whether it's going to be extended, many of them did not vote for Obama, but they did not come out to vote for Romney, because Romney could have done a better job in explaining why he was the better candidate. Unfortunately, he did not do that. The beneficiary was the president, and here we are.
I have very strong beliefs about the role of government and the cures for many of our societal ills. But there are certain issues I am sure people of opposite views can agree with me on. I mean, we're $16 trillion in debt, and that's pretty outrageous. And I wonder if the mass majority of people believe the debt and spending levels we have now are sustainable, and whether they believe it's smart policy or not. I mean, Bill Clinton was a part of an era, along with Newt Gingrich and the Republican Congress, where they campaigned against deficit runs in the 80s, and they implemented a balanced budget. I mean, let's go back to Dwight Eisenhower, who was, in my opinion, was more of a moderate, who enacted that Interstate Highway Act that helped create millions of new jobs quite successfully. And so Americans really need to rise, and this is what really frightens me today, that you don't see them rising above the political party's language and thought and talk to one another about our views. As what you're finally getting to now, what you're showing in the dialogue now, is where you actually agree when you get away from the labels, all this LBGT and all this stuff. And the many things, what gets lost is on the vast majority of things that you agree on. And we have to discover the common ground that will move this nation of ours forward. And our members don't do this anymore, as it is often pointed out, and that is why the country continues to suffer. And we can't let the political parties separate us, or else America will be in peril, and we must stand up and talk to each other. And once you get caught up in Republican and Democrat, and you're more aligned with the party than you are with what works for the country, the ideals that move us forward, that is what brings about common ground. I think sometimes we get too vetted and too in bed with these parties, and we lose sight of what is in the best interest of the American people, because we know that both these parties in many instances really don't have we the people best interests at heart. They're in bed with these lobbyists and special interest groups, and we're too blind to see it because we're so caught up in their rhetoric, Milo.
Well, Armstrong, to a certain degree that's true. But to the other degree, I have to disagree with you to some extent because, take this discussion, for instance. Elaine and I clearly have very different views on certain issues. But for the most part, we are centered on the same line. But the bigger issue is that while we disagree on some issues, we have the capacity to hear each other's perspective and respectfully disagree with one another. That exchange, that dialogue, is what propagates growth in any situation, in any culture.
Well, I would maintain that it's more than just talk. Obviously, we have to listen to each other. What matters are facts are important. Facts are stubborn things. Certain economic forces do matter. Having more money spent by the government, having been taken from others, is not a way to grow the economy.
Yes, not ever.
Bill Clinton did have a prosperous time there for a while. The economy did grow. Taxes were lower than, that was what all the big fuss was about on the Bush tax cuts. But Bill Clinton kept spending down by slashing the military. That's where the largest portion of his budget cuts came, at the expense of the military. So every era is different, but certain principles are indeed classic, and they carry from one decade to another. Right now, the government is extracting too much from individuals. When you give money to the government, you don't get to use that money to build a business, to hire people, to do things within your community, to be generous in your donations to good organizations. The government gets in the way. Ronald Reagan had a way of describing that when he talked about the government that got in the way. People understood what he was talking about, and I think potentially they could yet today. But we really do need to explain these concepts in a lot better way than we have been in the last year.
Hold there, we're coming back. Elaine Donnely, Milo Pinckney. I'm Armstrong Williams with 866-620-6620, 733-5620, streaming live, www.livestream.com/Armstrong Williams.
Armstrong Williams returns in a moment.
For more information on the Armstrong Williams Show, please visit our new website at www.rightsidewire.com. There you can find his syndicated column archive, view live streams, and get your favorite conservative pundits' views on the current issues affecting the American people. From building wealth to foreign policy, stay connected with Armstrong Williams and his colleagues at the all-new www.rightsidewire.com.
Does your school, team, church, or charity need a new fundraiser? Do you need to work out of your home or part-time? Are you a small business that can use an additional revenue stream? Then you need Yellow Llama. Do you need affordable web services or tools to enhance your existing business? Are you a graphic artist who wants to create a revenue stream with your art but not get ripped off? Then go to www.yellowllama.com.
Anderson Brothers Bank, a family-owned and operated establishment that blends traditional personal service, local market awareness, and advanced technology to meet the financial needs of its customers. Visit abbank.com or call 843-464-6271 to see how they can assist you with your banking needs. Anderson Brothers Bank, celebrating 75 years of community banking, the way it should be. Stability right in your backyard since 1933.
America must change course if we hope to survive and save the American dream for our children and grandchildren. How do we fix Social Security and Medicare? How do we cut government spending? How do we reform health care? How do we simplify the tax code? The Heritage Foundation has a bold plan that tackles these tough problems using common sense solutions that leave partisan politics on the sidelines. Find out how we can save the American dream at savingthedream.org, paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
Join the millions of Americans who pursue one of our country's finest traditions, from hunting to sport shooting. Since 1871, the NRA has grown as a service organization involved in all aspects of shooting sports and is a proud defender of the Bill of Rights. Join today to begin taking advantage of exclusive membership offers and discounts, including up to $25,000 in insurance coverage. Contact the NRA today. Call 1-800-672-3888 or visit nra.org.
Where heads of state, sports, entertainment, and political celebrities meet. You're listening to Armstrong Williams.
So, Elaine, back to you. Please continue.
Hello?
Yes, we're back to you. Go ahead.
Oh, yes. With regard to the economy, here in Michigan, something very interesting happened. Even though the state went for President Obama, the right-to-work referendum passed over the strong objections of the labor unions. They spent a lot of money in trying to get something passed that would have prevented right to work, and they lost. They lost big time. So that's a good sign. It shows that voters who understand the economy, who know that, yes, we want labor unions, but we don't need to have the kind of oppressive restrictions that some unions impose on the economies of many states. Michigan now will be more competitive with Indiana and other states around. So I think there is a sign of optimism there, a reason to be optimistic, but I think we need to do a better job in getting the message across about the economy.
Milo, how long before this economy stops tanking and really turn around? And how much will interest rates really impact this?
Well, it's going to
take a lot longer now, unfortunately.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I have to agree with Elaine on that. I think the transition that we were looking for that was earlier projected at 5 to 7 years is probably 10 to 12 at this point. Interest rates are going to have to change for the worse just to meet the debt service, because most of the money that is soon to be loaned, if any is, in fact, will be borrowed from third parties. So interest rates are going to have to go north. The consumer confidence. The one thing I think will happen is that we'll see an increase in consumer confidence, because unfortunately, the American consumer frequently has a short memory, and as soon as the new flat panel comes out, or whatever replaces the flat panel for consumer interest, want will override judgment, and that's the problem that got us in trouble in the first place. So I don't have high hopes for an appropriate change in the near future. I recognize that we're going to continue to have this problem, and quite frankly, I don't think we see a change until at least 2 years post-Obama.
Well, a lot of issues that involve the economy and the largest government program, healthcare, has to do with social policy, or social policy tends to complicate things. When the banks were told to give loans to people who could not afford to pay those loans back, this was the what was it called, Community Restoration Act, a long time ago. The consequences became visible just before 2008, when the housing market started to crash, when banks started to crash, when all of these bad loans, the full impact of that hit, and we're still reeling from that. And where did it start? It started in Congress with a well-meaning law, one that distorted economic forces, supply and demand, the bankers' culture of bankers. They give money to people who can afford to pay it back. When they were told by the government, no, you give it to people for other reasons, diversity or whatever, well, again, it distorted that market. And
Elaine, let me correct you on one piece. It wasn't that they were told to give it for diversity. They were told to rewrite their underwriting guidelines so that a greater group could benefit from it. And the reality of it is...
That's the same thing as what I just said.
The reality of it is that historically has turned into a diversity plan. The biggest problem in the whole housing issue, and people don't seem to realize it as they continue to rile about, as conservatives, is that the housing initiative was a Clinton-era initiative.
Right.
And Clinton's, housing initiative, Clinton and Andrew Cuomo, when Cuomo was Secretary of Housing, that initiative is what forced Fannie and Freddie Mac to lower their underwriting guidelines, which set the foundation for the current economic experience that we're having.
Right, and you know that, and I know that, but most people don't know that.
Understood.
And frankly, I think that the Republicans in Congress should have taken on that issue more directly and be on the guard for more social policies that are likely to come up in this administration, substituting things like, quote, diversity, unquote, for other more sound values that should be applied no matter what the issue is. So I primarily talk about defense. We're talking about other issues now. But my basic principle is this. You have to have certain guideposts, certain reasons why you do things. Culture, how things are done, the principles on which you base your policies. This is where it all starts with the fundamentals, and then you go from there. But when you start distorting the fundamentals and what is solid and what is known to be true and solid, and you say, well, I'm going to put politics first, pandering to special interest groups, that's when you get into trouble.
I have to agree.
Thank you.
What do we have to build on in terms of this country that is not talked about enough? Seems like everything we read, everything we hear, it is all tinged with disaster. What are the things that we should be talking about, Elaine?
Well, I think we should be talking more about individual rights rather than group rights. Individual rights and freedom, what is guaranteed under our Constitution. We're seeing way too many interferences of the government in individual choices, and we're going to see it even more with the health care system under Obamacare. That is one of those fundamental principles that I think people should be able to choose. We should have a health care system that allows more choices, not fewer, and not with government mandates saying you've got to have this kind of program or else, and if it involves interference with your religious freedom, with your views about funding for anything to do with abortion, well, we don't care about your principles. We're going to force you to do it this way anyway. I think, though, that just in a practical sense, when you have medical devices being taxed at much higher rates, and when you have people in my generation approaching the time when they're going to be needing hip replacements and these kinds of things, these are expensive devices. If the costs go up and you have a bureaucracy deciding, well, which patient is more worthy than the other, this is going to be even more serious interference in individual freedom. And we're looking at, down the road, 5-10 years. This is going to be with us for a long time unless something changes.
Well, I tell you what, if people don't start, let me get Alan on the line. Alan, not Alan. Alan, you are there. Go ahead.
Yes, how you all doing today?
Good, thank you.
All right. Well, just a quick comment on something that was just stated about the housing market. And a number of times I've tried to get this point across, and the misinformation continues with the reasoning being that is Fannie and Freddie being the culprit of the reason why the market went. And it was far from the truth. This was going on well before Fannie and Freddie had the opportunity to get into that. This was started with Bank of America and Citigroup. Actually, Citigroup first, but somehow kind of got away. But Bank of America, the main culprit of buying those companies that was actually doing the subprime mortgages, that was actually going out there and swindling the community, people that really didn't even need loans. They were giving them bad loans. So that's where it started. And then after the market, after Freddie and Fannie saw the market and was losing so much, then they was able to get into it with Clinton and the law. So that was well after it. So the beginning wasn't with Freddie and Fannie, and I wish y'all would stop saying that misinformation to us.
It started with Congress.
Milo?
I hear the point. I don't agree with it. I think that if you want to go down to the get very granular with it, the current market collapse was due to derivatives. Derivatives were enabled by default of more lax underwriting. The greatest offender of lax underwriting and the initiator of the reduction in underwriting criteria was Freddie and Fannie. That's a fact, not subject to opinion. The derivatives were attributable to Goldman Sachs, and Lehman Brothers, and the like, and then supported by AIG and other insurance carriers who sold insurance policies to guarantee the derivatives. So, if you want to get real granular, those are the facts. They're not subject to your opinion or mine. They just are what they are.
Right, and it all started with Congress because
Thank you.
The bankers were given the mandate to ensure that there would be more representation of different groups, diversity. In order to do that, loans were given to people who were not in a position to pay them back, and this was done on a grand scale across the nation. So I'm not going to get into all the details about derivatives and banking and all of that. All I'm saying is that the poor judgment shown in Congress should not be repeated again. We should learn from recent history and not repeat the mistakes that were made a decade or two ago.
I love radio when you have two intelligent, well-read, committed, sincere people who just love this country. And they love it so much, sometimes they spill over into each other's argument. It's not out of being uncivil or disrespectful. They just feel so passionate about what they believe. And I am just so honored that I was a part of this great dialogue today where there was substance. that's made people think. It made people step back. And in the end, there was a safe landing. And I want to thank our very special guest, Elaine Donnely. Do you have a website?
Yes, 3ws.cmrlink.org. And you'll find an article there about the Hagel nomination, Women in Combat. There's all kinds of different social issues involving the military there. And thank you again. It's 3ws.cmrlink.org.
Milo, your website?
www.yellowllama.com.
Listen, you both, I don't want to use all these words like these celebrities use, amazing, spectacular. I'm not using that. I cringe when I hear those words. I'm just
Hey, Armstrong, you got 3 minutes left. I got a question for Elaine.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Completely off subject, but I'm curious what your thoughts are on it.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on gun control?
I certainly support the Second Amendment. I'm a little leery of guns personally. I don't like the idea of guns in school necessarily. I did read an article that was very interesting, though, about non-lethal defenses in schools that ought to be used, including a protective device.
For more information on the Armstrong-Williams Show, please visit our new website at www.